Welcome, welcome. Good last day before reset day. Today we do something we haven't done in a while. We look at what happened in the last few days, some interesting news and some interesting things to ask your opinion about. Opinion which I will then discard and keep my own, but it's always nice to hear a different perspective. The different perspective I want to start asking you about is something that latches on our last video. Yesterday there was the video about the performance of specs and classes in Mythic Plus, in raids, how they were doing, etc, etc. Now today, Wowhead, because the guys over at Wowhead are big fans of mine, they released an article in a similar vein of my video, talking about the specs in raids. Now from there, a good point rose up. In BFA, we had several specs that were dedicated, they had a niche, they were dedicated to Mythic Plus. They were good in Mythic Plus, but they weren't good at all in raids. Or we could have said the opposite, specs that were very good in raids, but pretty poor in Mythic Plus. For example, Assassination Rogue was the most used and popular spec in raids, but it was terrible in Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus was dominated, as it had been for like 2 expansions, by Outlaw. You had Warlock being the strongest, basically one of the strongest specs in raids, first with Affliction, and then with Destruction, and in Mythic Plus they were awful. They were playing Demonology, but even Demonology wasn't that powerful. You had Restoration Druid being super, ultra, mega popular in Mythic Plus, whereas 2 of the most used raid healers were Discipline and Restoration Shaman, which became much less popular in Mythic Plus, compared to the Druid and partially the Holy Paladin. So when we go and look at this current season, we see some worrying trends, right? Because Affliction is the strongest spec in raids, and is also the strongest spec in Mythic Plus. Fire Mage is the strongest spec in raids, and is the strongest spec in Mythic Plus. Marksmanship is the strongest spec in raid and in Mythic Plus. Shadow Priest is popular in raids and in Mythic Plus. Balance Druid is popular in raids and in Mythic Plus. So we have had a destruction, a complete and total destruction of the niche of specs. Even Outlaw, the stereotypical AoE only spec, only used for Mythic Plus, is now also very popular for raids. Not only that, but even something, forever chained to being just a raid bot, a raid healer bot, Resto Shaman is currently just dethroning Restoration Druid as the most used and most powerful Mythic Plus healer, even at keys above 15. And Restoration Shaman is of course also the more popular and stronger raid healer. We no longer have this dichotomy of using a spec for Mythic Plus but not for raids and vice versa. At least this current season, this current tier is telling us this. So I wanted to know your input about this. Basically the only last clear difference is that Vengeance Demon Hunters are still much more popular for Mythic Plus than they are for tanking in raids. But that's just about it. There is very few other specs that are currently in this position. And I think this is a big missed opportunity for Blizzard, because it allowed them to keep more specs alive. Basically to keep more people happy. If you allowed, for example, Fire to be better in raids but worse in Mythic Plus at the advantage, at the benefit of something like Arcane. Same for Warlock, Affliction or Destruction, and Marksmanship or Beast Mastery. Instead, like this situation we have right now, all the players of each classes are going to be funneled into a single spec for all content, which I think is pretty bad. So tell me what you guys think. What's been your experience about this? I think it's pretty disappointing to have so many top raid specs also being top in Mythic Plus. It's not something we have seen at this level before. Let's hear your thoughts about this. Now moving on, spending 30 seconds on something I completely ignored, which is the world first kills and the world first race. And for good reason, because I don't give a shit, but still. The first thing I found interesting is that in BOD, Method spent upwards of 100 million gold. In Nyalota, Limit spent 257 million gold. And now in Castle Nathria, Limit spent 331 million gold. So we're going higher and higher in the money required for the world first achievement. Now, this was obviously more expected due to the lack of loot and also the lack of funneling the gear, thanks to the fact that now Mythic Plus drops less than heroic Castle Nathria loot. So you can no longer swap and trade items as easily. So more BOEs, more gold for BOEs were needed than usual. Pretty much every single Limit player had full 226 BOEs whenever they could buy them from any type of auction house across the entirety of the US. So I bet that costed a lot of money. But what I wanted to talk about was the seed and the triggering that happened with the world first race, where Limit got first and Echo got second. So the triggering happened because, almost in an anime-like sequence, Limit got world first, but Echo was 16 hours behind because they are from Europe, and Europe got the raid 16 hours later. So people were like, no, it's not a real world first until 16 hours have gone by, including some of the Echo players, actually. So Echo ended up killing the boss, killing the Nathrius, and getting world second, something like 16 hours and 23 minutes later. So inevitable shit flinging happened, you know, talk about raids having to be released at the same time to put everyone on the same level. Others saying nope, because Limit had to basically beta test the bosses. Some bosses were bugged, they had more server problem at release, so their time ahead wasn't as much as it would seem, 16 hours. Personally, I don't give a shit. I heard the point, I guess, that you can't release the raid at the same time because that would mean hours of maintenance, and you can't just create 2 or 3 hours of maintenance at like 4 p.m. in the middle of the day for millions of people just so 25 people, 20 people can race for world first on even grounds. What I do think could happen though, listen to this, you don't need to actually release the raid after the maintenance, after the reset. What you can do is do the reset, get done with maintenance, get done with lag and server queues and whatnot, and then open the raid after. Literally close the door with a key, lock it, and then open it after. You open it at something like, I don't know, 10 p.m. in EU and what, 3 p.m. in NA, something like that. I think that would be more fair. It would allow all of these freaks trying their world first race without this much drama every time. We haven't really had this drama before to this level. You know why? Because NA had not competed for world first in like 10 years. So obviously nobody ever gave a shit about NA having an advantage. Yeah, you would get the couple of memes about NA being so bad even despite the advantage and whatnot, but for the most part nobody cared. Last expansion, people started muttering about the advantage of NA because NA guilds were getting closer, particularly Limit were getting closer to compete, so people were like, should we mention the advantage or not? Nah, they still lost, whatever. But then they got to Nyalota, world first. But hey, you know, method was falling apart, a bunch of drama, you know, okay, that was just a one-off, it doesn't count. Now though, we had this case where Limit and Echo went very close with each other, if you count the advantage of Limit, so people were like, nope, this time the advantage mattered a lot. It was crucial, so we have to do something about it. So after 10 years of being a non-issue, now suddenly it's a priority to change. As I said, I wouldn't have a problem if it was to be changed without affecting millions of people. But at the end of the day, you still have to look at the greater good. The greater good. You can't actively misplace hundreds of thousands of people just to benefit 20 to 30. So tell me your solutions about this, and then we will see. The best one will be awarded with nothing. Nothing. You're getting fucking nothing. Just a clap, okay? You're getting some claps. Now, on to the next bit of news. This is not very fun though, not very happy. We have received multiple reports of this issue and can confirm it is not working as intended. Currently, we do not have a workaround or resolution that can be provided. We apologize for any inconvenience while our developers work as quickly as possible to resolve the issue. So, what is this? This is the hunts in the Beast Warrens not working for weeks. Any developers in the chat, any software developers, software engineers, anyone that can shed some light into what's going on here? Because this system has been put in the beta at this point, what, 2 months ago? How is it still not working? Like, this is a mob spawning once you meet a certain criteria, right? Like, kill X mobs and then the final mob of the hunt spawns. How is it still not working? Because Blizzard owes me something like 2,000 reputation by now. Yeah, as you can see by my shiny sockets, I already am exalted, but I still want that reputation on principle. And also I want that on my alt, which I haven't gotten. So I'm not sure what's been going on here. I'm not sure if the developers working as quickly as possible should have worked like 2 months ago on this before actually releasing this system in the expansion while it was working as intended, instead of releasing it broken. But hey, that is pretty annoying. Some better news, some cool news. Wowhead came in with an in-house Mythic Plus damage calculator. Now in BFA, we had some cool systems for this. We had Totem, and we had, more importantly, Just Heal Us. They were sites which basically allowed you to choose your spec, your class, whatever, and then select any sort of stats you wanted and abilities active you wanted to see how much damage you were going to take from each ability in Mythic Plus, depending on the key and depending on the affix. So, are you doing a tyrannical key in King's Rest and you're afraid of the Severing Axe dot that is going to murder you? Select the key level, select tyrannical, and then input your stats. Your stamina, your versatility, your armor, your avoidance, your active mitigation, to see how much damage you were going to take. Exactly. This was very useful for tanks, it was very useful but also for healers and for DPS, because you could see if you could survive certain abilities. Now we have gotten our first little bit of tool for Shadowlands, although it's very early stages, because what's available right now, it's just you selecting your armor and selecting your versatility. You have no options for active mitigation, you have no option for absorb shields, you don't even have options for things like avoidance, for example. But it can still give you the broad idea of how much damage you're taking, particularly as a tank. For example, you're doing King's Rest and you have to deal with the Soul Crusher of Muezala. You can see just how much armor you need to not get chunked for like 70% of your HP. Even if you're a DPS, it can be useful, right? You can go to Theater of Pain, for example, and you're gonna have the Tyrannical Phantasmal Parasite, the dot, the very hard ticking dot left behind by Kultarok. Yeah, you know, at a plus 15, that dot is going to tick for 70,000 damage. At least now you know that it's gonna be doing 70,000 damage to you, and that's a pretty good indication that you need some good fucking defensives to survive that, or a dispel. So I'll leave you behind the link. It's a good start as far as tools go, but it's gonna need some improvements to become as complete as what we had in BFA. Now, closing the video, as I am camping in front of Valinor for the 4th day in a row. Congratulations to my shaman friends from NA, who can get their god-fearing legendary 16 hours before me. I wish a curse upon you all. What we have to look at, though, at the end of the second Mythic week is that after 2 weeks of Mythic progression, we have 10 Mythic Gahoon kills compared to the 2 of Mythic Denatrius. We have 29 Mithrax kills when we only have 4 for Stone Legion Generals, and then we have 93 Zul kills compared to the 21 of Sludgefist, and then 392 of Vectis compared to the 57 of Council of Blood. And this is with more bosses that you have to cut through in Castle Nathria compared to just the 8 of Uldir. So even with lower bosses, Uldir numbers are still much lower. And also don't forget that the release of Shadowlands had the, supposedly, as Blizzard officially mentioned, the highest amount of subscription numbers of any other previous expansion at release. So even despite these numbers being increased, even despite Uldir having less bosses, the numbers of kills are still significantly lower than Uldir. What does this mean? I don't know. Maybe that it's harder. Maybe that the item level cut that we have had did not prepare people for this level of progression compared to the previous expansions, where, like fattened pigs, we were just sitting on our Titan Forges and sitting on our easy, spammable Mythic Plus for easy gear, and now we have to deal with something completely different in Castle Nathria. Maybe everyone just got worse at playing the game. I don't know. So, with this beautiful Bastion panoramic, which is about to become much better in about 16 hours, I'm gonna leave you. We are going to take a break and see each other tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be the start of the next week with new affixes coming in. And it's going to be another Tyrannical week. So Tyrannical has gotten lower success percentages on a lot of dungeons because of the problematic killing of bosses compared to just the wiping of fortified trash mobs, which is much more forgiving than wiping on bosses. So we will have to wait and see how Tyrannical is going to evolve throughout the week. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, I'm gonna lit a campfire, have a nice meal, go to sleep, and then wake up for my Christmas present.